Hey everyone, I'm Sapna. I lead product at Maxim AI, and today I'm here to talk to you as fellow product folks on how you can set up an evals process for you and your team. This cookbook is aimed to give you a very clear outcome of how you can set up the foundations to iterate and improve your AI agents over time. If you're building Gen AI products, whether those are simple RAG applications or really complex multi agent systems, how do you really define a repeatable and collaborative evals process along with all of the stakeholders across the AI development lifecycle? A quick overview of what we are going to cover. First, we will start with experimentation. How do you iterate on prompts and agents? How do you run some of these experiments at scale and eventually deploy confidently? Next, we would move to actually running some of these evaluations in terms of how do you evaluate your agent interactions across your test cases, what are the kind of metrics that might matter to you, and take a particular example of an agent as we go through this process. And last, we will look at how do you now observe this agent when it is in production in the hands of your actual users, being able to monitor granular traces of what happened in a real world scenario, having quality checks running in production, and being proactive about agent quality as your users are using it, learning from that, and bringing it back into your iteration cycle. So yeah, super excited. Do follow along, and as we walk through these phases, and do leave any questions you have on this video. Started. For the purpose of this cookbook, we will use the example of a scribing agent that helps doctors take their particular conversation with the patients, check for patient history, and summarizes what happened in every interaction for the purpose of documentation and further history. I'm going to go quickly to the Maxim platform, and what you can see here is the Maxim UI. We will start with the most common entry point for experimentation, that is prompts. I have created a new scribing agent here. What you see is the playground where I can actually set up my prompt, experiment, change all of my different parameters, and see how my prompt is behaving. In this case, in the interest of time, I have already put together some of the prompts, which I will just copy paste here. So here you can see I have my system message, which I'm just going to quickly copy in here, that explains what the purpose of this agent is. And I also have further details on the format, that it should provide summarization in all the references to the patient ID, etc. in this user message that I have now added. You can see this together becomes my prompt, and there are certain variables within this. So all variables could be referenced using double curly braces. So here you could see for the transcript, it's a variable because that would come from the particular conversation. And again, for the patient ID, this is a variable that is for the specific patient. Now, in this case, the value of both transcript and patient, as you see under the variable section, can be added by me. So let me quickly put in the transcript that I have, which is a conversation between this doctor and a patient, Sarah, back and forth. And I know that the patient ID here is maybe P001, and I can now test how this is doing on, say, GPT-4o, or maybe right now I'm using GPT-4o mini, which is something that is in my budget. And let me try to run this. But you can see that in this case, we also require for this prompt to use some tool to get the patient information. And we have told it to get it using the tool provided. For this, we'll have to set up the tool on Maxim so it can actually call that particular tool. So I'm going to quickly just save the session here and move to the prompt tool section, which here you can see that I have some tools. This is the patient history tool that I had set up earlier. This is just an API endpoint for the patient history that fetches from the database the information. It's a get call that for the variable, whatever value I send it, it will get this patient history. And I can also test it here. So if I do P001, I can see what is the history that I would be getting, and this is some details around that. Now I'll go back quickly to prompt, and what I can do here is under the configuration section, there are lots of different configurations around temperature, max tokens, advanced parameters, etc. that I can define, including response formats. For now, I'm going to leave all of this as is and just link the tool that the prompt needs here. So you can see now I have the patient history, I have the right model, and let me just quickly run this. So at this time, what you can see is happening is, first we're going to wait for the assistant to respond based on this setup of the prompt. The assistant would ideally ask for the tool to be called. So here you can see that it has asked for this tool to be called with the patient ID P001 that was given in the variable. The tool was called and executed, and there was some history gotten back. And based on that, the assistant has created a clinical summary like we originally asked it to, including all of the sections we asked it. So it is working as I expected. I can look in and see if there is anything that it is not actually up to the mark in terms of maybe follow-up instructions, or what are the kind of diagnoses that were discussed. Was it actually discussed? I could always cross-check with the transcript. For now, what I'm going to do is try to compare this to another model. So first, maybe I will publish this version, which is the GPT-4o mini, and I will include these two messages, which are actually my prompt version, and publish this. What this means is now I have track of what the state of my prompt was at this point in time, and I can now go ahead and see these versions in a list. So now that I see how GPT-4o mini is working, I could choose to maybe try out a different model for my other version. I could also do this side by side by actually selecting a different prompt or a different version or creating it. For now, in the interest of time, what I'm just going to do is choose a Claude model that I think might work correctly, set this up here, and publish another version. And this version, maybe I could call Claude 4 Sonnet, include the same messages, and publish. So now I have two versions to compare, and what I want to be able to do is really compare these across a set of test cases, right? What I did right now was just a single transcript, and this can never give me confidence that which is better or what is good enough. Your versions could also be used for changes to your prompt itself, changes to your configurations, any change that you make that could significantly impact the actual output. So here there are 2 or 3 different pieces that we need to run a test. First, what are the test cases that we want to test against? And that is our data set. So we're going to go into the dataset section and set up a dataset which is called scribing agent. Here you can see it's being used for prompt testing. I have just a column called transcript, which is going to be of type variable. I don't have any input as such here. That's coming from the user. I don't have a ground truth as of now. If you did, you could also add that and run evaluations basis that. But for now, I'm only going to change this column to patient ID, which is a type variable as well. And it will be used as a value for both of these. Let me just remove the capital since I hadn't put it in the actual prompt. And this data set will now be created. Now in this case, what I'm going to do is quickly upload a CSV that I have of some transcripts that I generated. And I could also generate these using synthetic data. For now, I'm going to put the CSV here. The transcript maps to transcript column and patient ID to patient ID that I had in my CSV. And then now I'm going to upload this. Now what happens here is I have a set of test cases that I want to start my evaluations with. And of course, the aim is for me to curate more cases over time as I see my internal users test, as I see my actual users in production interact with the system. I could add splits for different use cases and then run on some of these more advanced evaluations for thousands of cases. For now, we will take this data set and try to run an experiment. But before that, another main ingredient in running an evaluation is what are the metrics or evaluators that you actually want to run. On Maxim, you could use certain evaluators that are from the evaluator store. For example, here you have a whole set of different kinds of evaluators that you could use directly with a single click. And we're going to use some of them, for example, toxicity. But you could also create your own custom evaluators of various types so that you can make domain specific evaluation for what you need. And a good example of that is this follow-up check evaluator that I created. All it does is it checks whether the output, which is a variable coming from the actual run, did the summary, which is the output, actually mention the follow-up instructions as per what the doctor had mentioned in the transcript, and did we not miss on the follow-up piece. So this is a very basic evaluator. You could have lots of complex evaluators based on your particular use case. Those could be AI evaluators like this is, where I have set up my scale, my model, etc. I could also play around with this evaluator in the playground before using it in my experiment. For now, since I've set this up already, we're going to go quickly and run our first evaluation. So I'm going to go back to prompts. If you remember, we have two versions here, the V1, which is on 4.0 Mini, and V2, which is on Claude 4 Sonnet. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say test. I want to test a comparison run of V2 versus V1. And the data set here is the one I just created for a scribing agent. I don't have context or retrieval happening here, so I'll leave that. And I will choose a set of evaluators, in this case toxicity, which makes sure that my agent is not saying anything toxic in its final summary. Follow-up check that we created earlier, and the main one, which is summarization, that actually helps set up and check whether your final summary matches what was in the transcript. It's not hallucinating, it's not making up stuff, but it's still actually covering everything. So here I'm going to quickly go trigger this test run and let's see what happens. Now here you can see that this is the particular prompt that we were working on. We are now running to get for this transcript and patient ID what is the output for each of these cases. You can see that in a particular case the tool call was made, the output was found, and this is filling up for all of them. And as soon as all of them are ready, that's when you'll also start seeing evaluations happening. So you can see the first few entries, there is some values that are coming for these particular evaluators. You also have a sense of your evaluation cost here, and of course latency, which is a big criteria. There is still some stuff running on version 2, but I think version 1 is complete, and here we have our results. Here you can see that there is a minor difference between the V1 and V2 that we tried out on different models. Here you also get complete detailed reports on cost, tokens, latency. So as a product manager, if I was to look at this, I can see that Claude performed a slightly lower than the GPT-4o model. But here in the case of cost or tokens, you can see that V2 was way more expensive. So even though it was way more expensive, it's almost similar in its quality. And here latency as well for V2 was much, much higher. So to see the cases that actually failed, I can just go into any particular case. For example, here you can see that the follow-up wasn't mentioned in the summary. If I go here and I go into the details, I can actually see what the output was, why was it wrong, and things like that. The follow-up instructions did not match what was originally in the transcript. Under evaluations, you can see that the follow-up check was no, because although there were certain instructions in the particular summary, the transcript mentions different instructions and that was not covered. So you can actually get reasoning for why certain evaluations are giving a particular result, and look at this in a lot more detail. Similarly, you could do this for all of your entries, debug scenarios that are not working, and accordingly analyze. Another interesting piece is, although you may do auto evaluation for your first round, the last mile is often solved via human eval and having a human in the loop. So we can go ahead and add evaluations that are human. For example, I could add a correctness evaluator, which is just a basic thumbs up, thumbs down. And I could choose if I want this to be annotated directly on the report or sent via email. Now, on the report is what we'll do right now, but we also have a completely separate human raters dashboard. I'll send the email and show that to you quickly as well. Maybe let me just send it to myself for now with whatever logic, etc., and then add these evaluators. Now here you can see that when I go in here, I can actually just add my ratings to, I can say this as per me is correct, and so I'm not adding any comment. But when I go to this one, maybe in this particular case where we saw that the follow-up wasn't mentioned, I could say, okay, yes, this is actually wrong, add my own comment to say follow-up instructions were an issue. I can suggest a new output if I need to, and then actually add this rating. Now you can see on top here that as you add these, you have a completely separate information on all your human evaluations. You can manage that, you can view the results, and look at how human eval becomes a part of this as well. I'll quickly check on my email where I have this latest email to evaluate a test run. And here you can see that I have a request. I can actually start evaluating and see this completely separate dashboard as well. This is very helpful when you want to send it to external folks, whether those are subject matter experts. In this case, maybe they're actual doctors who are giving you that feedback. It becomes completely agnostic from the rest of the tool, and they don't have to be logged in onto your general reports, etc. Coming back to the report, these are completely shareable. I could share this with my team and then use this report to actually become the way for me to iterate over time and see if there are improvements, take decisions, and things like that. Now that we've covered the first experimentation and the second piece, evaluation, let's move to the last piece of how does this behave when it is in production. Now, I've seen that a particular model is better. Maybe I think that the V1 is actually better because it's cheaper and it also behaves better. Marginally, and I would actually want to optimize for both of these factors right now. So I'm on V1, which is GPT-4o mini. I can just choose to actually deploy this. This would need an SDK integration to fetch the right prompt. Say I have integrated that, I could actually just create a deployment from here. So I'm going to say on my environment beta, because that's where first people would test it, I will be deploying this, and I could just choose to deploy. Now let's quickly go ahead to what happens after deployment. Now that you've deployed, you're pretty excited. It's in the hands of your users and you want to see how they are actually acting with your particular prompt and agent. So the last piece of what we're going to discuss is your actual production monitoring and continuous quality check, which you can do via logging. Now, let me quickly go into logs. Here I have already set up this scribing agent because this is something that I integrated the SDK. I have these logs coming in and I'm able to collaborate with teams to actually look at what is happening in production. Here you can see that in the recent past, there have been 104 traces across different days. You can look at the cost, tokens, etc. And not just performance metrics, but also quality pieces. And here you can see that there are certain quality checks that are happening in production as well, including summarization, follow-up, etc. And I'll show you how to set that up. So here, first, before we go to the evaluation piece, just want to quickly cover what observability really means. What are you looking for when you're looking at logs like this? You would want to look at a particular scenario. Maybe there's a certain case where you see that the output wasn't as expected or the cost was really high. You can go into this, look at what exactly happened. For example, there was a particular summarization of the first transcript. Then there was some patient info got, and the basis of that, there was a summarization including the patient history to give some form of complete summarization. And this is what you see here as what went in and what was the final assistant message, which is what your user saw. So you have full diagnosis. You can look at this in terms of time and what happened. Of course, here there are just 3 steps because we are doing a quick cookbook. You could have lots of different services being called. You could have retrievals happening. All of that can be granularly traced. On the evaluation front is where it gets really exciting because you can set up the same kinds of evaluators that you had pre-release on your actual logs as well. I can say at my trace level, which is a single request response between your system and user, I want to check for these things, map them to particular inputs within. So I can say in summarization, consider whether the output mapped to the transcript and the tool results, because that is also important to see that it checked for patient history before giving a summarization. So I can set all of this up. I can set up a sample. This is a demo agent, so I'm doing it on 100% of my logs, but you could do it on a small percentage. You could do it based on certain filter rules, like your actual user feedback. If that is 0 from your actual user, only then run auto evals and things like that. For now, I won't change any of this configuration. I'm just closing this, and I can also search through my logs in a very detailed fashion using all of these different cases across my filters and save some of these views to say I want to come back to these kind of filters and always look for these kind of cases. The last piece actually becomes, how do you be proactive about this? You can see even with 100 traces, it's not possible for me to go through all of these, right? I could only look at it high level. So how do I set up alerts that check for some of this? So if I create an alert, I could create it on the performance metric, like if there are errors, if latency spikes, things like that. But I could also do it on evaluation scores. And what that means is if any of my evaluators that I choose, say for example, if toxicity value violates its pass criteria at least 5 times in 5 minutes, then there's something wrong. And I want to be notified on this Slack channel where me and my engineers can come and look into what's going on and try to fix this quickly. So this gives you insight that you can use to iterate quickly and make sure your user experience is not impacted. I already have an alert, so I'm just going to cancel this and show you how we can take all our learnings from production back into our iteration cycle so that we can do this again and again as we continue to improve our agent. Let me here go and check for cases where summarization was less than not equal to 1, which is the case that I want to try for today. And these are 13 traces. I could actually manually go and check what happened in these cases, check what the actual transcript was and what the final result was, and annotate some of this. So say for example, if I say this is factually incorrect, I want to add some comment to say that this is missing whatever XYZ for now, and I think that the output should be something else. Now, for now, I'm just going to add something quickly and then save this annotation. Now at this point, what is happening is I have successfully annotated. I could do this for a lot of other cases as well across all of these. and then choose some of these examples to add back to my data set, because now I have this new ground truth that I want to test against. Or I just want to take these inputs and say it's okay whatever the final output is, but this thing should work always, and get it annotated further again. So in this case, I want to add it back to my scribing agent where I have these different columns. I want to take the input as a transcript, the output I don't need in this case, and I could take the human corrected output if I wanted. So this is a quick piece of how you would curate data back to your actual scribing agent dataset and use it further. So I could just add this as a new column, which is expected output, and then add that to the dataset. For now, it's just adding 3 rows. I could do this as and when I annotate for more and more rows and run some of my experiments on that going ahead. So for now, we've reached the end of this cookbook, and I do hope that you have a clear idea on how you can bring some of your agents into this continuous quality layer, thinking about how do you run these experiments at scale. A few things that we did not cover today but will be covering in our upcoming cookbooks is how you could bring your agent via an HTTP endpoint or build it as a no-code agent within Maxim. We also have released our voice agent capabilities, which is very exciting. And of course, there are lots and lots of different pieces on how you can create custom dashboards as you do these iterations over time, see your metrics really change, and set up your evaluation pipeline end to end. We do hope that you're able to collaborate as a team to make the quality of your agent better without compromising on speed. So see you next time, folks, and hope you'll learn something from this. Do share any questions that you have in the comments, and we'd be very, very happy to help out. Thank you.